Hello, good evening, everyone, and a warm welcome to the Design Village. Today, we have amongst us a very talented and amazing and an inspiration to all of us, Miss Anavila Misra. Anavila, we welcome you to the Design Village and thank you for embarking upon this new journey of why fashion matters. Today, we tread upon this journey of introducing a six-part digital series of why fashion matters. We commenced the series with one of the pioneers of pragmatic and conscious fashion in India, Miss Anavila Misra. A constant inspiration, a dedicated mentor, and an ardent well-wisher, she is a dear friend of the Design Village community, and she has seen the school grow through its dimensions and through its humble years. Anavila, we thank you for this opportunity to share the forum with us and to learn the true dictum of what fashion holds in turbulent times for us. We are both privileged and honored. Building upon Francis Corner's famous book on the importance of fashion, the talk series aims to unravel the works of prolific Indian fashion and textile designers and expression creators by sharing their stories and contributions to the industry, economy, and society while discussing the future of the field of fashion. The Design Village believes in a life led through design and positions all its villagers to undertake an individual journey that brings about an impact that will resonate with changing times and beyond. The Fashion and Textile Atelier imagines a journey of a textile and fashion designer to be beyond a cloth, an illustration, a weave, a stitch, a garment, and a lifestyle. It questions fashion as a fad and a privileged and only for the privileged and scouts for the unperturbed domains such as a sustained closet and a repurposed weave. Here, a textile is beyond a fabric and a space and is what one co-creates and empathizes with. On this note of change, Anavila, I thank you for being here amongst us.
Thanks, thanks a lot. It's my pleasure.
So Anavila, we've just put together a few of your essence together to actually let the young aspirants see what is it that your world looks like. And please feel free to add to what I am sort of sharing so that it could be a very enriching experience. Thank you. I hope my screen is visible to everyone.
Yes.
Yeah? Okay. So this actually goes back to 2011 when Anavila actually wanted to recreate what the true meaning of sustainability is in the industry of India. You know, the word sustainability is actually misinterpreted and misused. People think developing a green habit or a green conscious is enough for a brand to qualify as sustainable. But you will actually see through today's journey that a brand needs to be far more than just believing in sustainability. The mere belief in sustainability is not enough to qualify as a conscious habit. And that is exactly why we had Anavila open this chapter, because it's extremely important to understand what goes behind a weave. A weave is a million of stories, but each of those yarns that go behind making that story is relevant. And that is why we say that it's a dream of green and it inspires and supports indigenous. So before Anavila actually founded her label in 2011, she of course graduated from National Institute of Fashion Technology in New Delhi. And she worked with menswear domains. And you have these amazing brands such as Louis Philippe and Will's Lifestyle, who actually defined the menswear of early 2010s and the past decade. And it sort of gave this new language to the attire that was bit in between the 9 to 5 job and anything and everything after that. While she was working with the menswear, she got to experiment and explore this beautiful gamut of fabrics, the weaves. And from there, the penchant for loving the fabrics, loving the colors and weaves, working with the communities and understanding what goes behind creating them became her real power. After she moved on from the menswear industry, she worked with the Ministry of Rural Development to actually see what could be created for these industries, which are small scale, these artisans who spend their lives in weaving one small piece of carpet. But that is what a community, a craftsmanship, a made in India actually stands for. And that is what she tried to do in her time there. And of course, while working there, there was always this awareness of how could fashion be made more relevant? Why should a garment find more than what it serves? And hence the crossover from menswear to the world of textile, and through textile to the world of sari. It's extremely important to understand that sari is just not an occasion wear. Today, Anavila has really redefined why a sari is just not meant to serve occasional purpose. It is actually about that habit of developing sari as an Indian extension of representation. And that is why fashion really matters. It's not very easy to weave linen. The fabric, the yarns of linen cannot be spun and twisted into longer dimensions. However, to spin a 9 yard sari developed a new intellect, asked for a new prowess, and that is exactly what she worked with the communities of West Bengal and Jharkhand and was able to create. So you see these amazing weaves of cotton, silk, and linen interspersing beautifully to create a garment which speaks for itself, a garment which has no embellishments such as surface ornamentations. It is just the weaves that tell it a story. Going back to something which is extremely special to the brand Anavila, and also what actually I really found very special was reminiscing the childhood memories to these Busa dolls. Busa actually means a younger sister. Growing up in a family where traditions were extremely important, they were considered to be pure, just like what her name denotes in Sanskrit, and how relationships were sort of fostered. It was important to understand that as Indian children, we were exposed to Barbie dolls and Kens who actually had a very foreign way of dressing up. The skin tones were different, the whole appearance was different, and the kids were expected to sort of embody themselves in Indian tradition. And that is what was a big disconnect. So the idea of Busa dolls was while playing with these dolls, you allow the Indian heritage of the Indian garment, the Indian textile to sort of exchange. And kids learn the art of wearing and practicing Indian attire while growing up. And that was a piece of a part, her history, which she projected into future. And every collection that she makes from now on essentially has this curated together beautifully. And that is what is a story to tell of today. Of course, when you see the product goes beyond what it stands for, it actually transcends and people sort of extrapolate it into a level where it starts making a meaning which is beyond just a story. So, Anavila, on that stage, I would take through the journey and have this privilege of sharing the space with you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Really thorough.
No, I think when you have true inspirations in front of you, it sort of just flows. And, it was very important for us, Anavila, when we were curating, and of course, when Saurabh spoke to you, that we got someone who actually believed in why the design village was founded. So it was very important for us to start with someone whom we actually knew and who actually knew us before we actually knew ourselves. So thank you for that.
It's my pleasure, and I'm really very fond of your school and the way you're trying to integrate various aspects of fashion and design into it. Really commendable.
Thank you for that, Anavila. If you're ready for a few questions, then
Yes,
I
of
would
course.
like to start. Yeah. So something that always runs in our minds is as designers, if we were not design practitioners, what would we have been? Have you ever had such thoughts? Do you think a thought of that sort passed your mind that if you
Yes,
were
of
not a
course.
designer,
Yes,
what would
all
you
the
have?
time, and I think I'll definitely, take that path as well. I would have been a farmer or a florist, for sure. And in future, maybe I will live this dream as well.
I think we are all moving towards how we had started. So it's actually life moving
Yes,
to circle.
yes. So my grandfather was a farmer. I come from that family, and it's in my DNA. So I'm sure I'm going to get there
I
sometime.
really do hope, and I think it's going to make a huge difference to how we see life currently.
Yes.
Thank you. So, if I was to ask you, we've discussed, of course, this last time, but the shift from menswear to a women's wear is a completely new domain. How did that happen for you? And how did you perceive that change?
So, see, Vatsal, it was not a very conscious decision on both parts. Menswear was something which came to me in terms of my first job, which was a campus placement. So, Madura came the first day of the campus placement, and they picked me up out of all the students they had interviewed that day. And it was really a delight to be a part of that organization. Um, I did not put so much thought. I have been a very curious child. I'm still that. I mostly not define a lot of things around me. I flow with the flow. So I was really happy and open to the idea of menswear. When I moved to Madura, it was a wonderful studio. Our seniors were such wonderful mentors. I learned everything from scratch in design, particularly because I had come from knitwear design background. I was not a textile designer to start with, and also menswear. So as a woman, you know about women's fashion, you follow trend, and menswear is a completely new ball game. Wasn't a completely new ball game, but these guys really mentored me well. I still remember my first boss, Manish. We still kind of catch up with each other, and very surprisingly, both of us are working on sarees now. Him and me as well. So it was a fascinating 1 year journey. At Madura Garments, and then I moved on to Will's Lifestyle in Delhi. There, I kind of kept learning. When you look at menswear, and that also in the formal category, in the category of office wear, it can look very drab to you. At the end of the day, it is a shirt and a trouser and a jacket and a tie, you know. But learning the entire process of menswear, what are different collars, how the cuffs are cut, what is a half cutaway, what is a full cutaway, how the ties are, different weights and different shapes and different sizes. It was fascinating. As I was discussing with you the other day when we met, my first trip to Saint Germain Street in London, I went into the Dunhill store, and then I went to Xenia later, many years later, and I was completely taken with the craftsmanship of what they had put in their products, and how menswear can be so scientific and so design led and so thought through. So it's actually such impeccable design which goes into making a jacket. Not everybody can make a jacket, how it is cut and how it is pressed. So it was a lovely, lovely 4 years of my life, which was menswear. And after that, this project happened, which you just mentioned, Ministry of Rural Development, Ministry of Textiles. So from a corporate structure, I wanted to move into something which was to do with the grassroots, more so to move to craft clusters of India. And somehow when you really want something very badly, it somehow the nature kind of conspires to give it to you. So this project was tailor made to what I had wanted to do at that point of time. One of my faculty called me, the left DG interviewed me, the JS of the Ministry of Rural Development, all of them were sitting there, and then they asked me why from corporate to something which is a government body, and it was a government project. And I was like, even if you give me my petrol bill from Gurgaon to Delhi, I'm ready to do this job. And I was very excited about it, and they understood that. They hired me for that job, and I think that was a changing point of my life. Those 3 years of um, driving that project, creating that whole, giving form to that whole project, working with so many craft clusters. We had 21 crafts with us, which we were working on at that point of time. And from design to marketing and everything in between, it was a lovely experience. And that is something which later in life, after my 5 years of sabbatical, when my son was born, pushed me to where I am today. So it was not a very conscious decision of moving from menswear to women's wear, or in fact moving to menswear from the very first. But it was more deeper. I think it was more to do with working with the skill set which we have so widespread in India, and creating something very contemporary and now with it. giving it more meaning for every day, for us in cities who are somehow who understand and appreciate the skill behind a craft, but are unable to connect with that product maybe. So it's a marriage of the two, the contemporary and the fashion and what we see here, and what the skill set lies in the villages.
Absolutely. And I think what you really mentioned about the passion actually leading your path is so important. This is what we sort of share with the students also. That, if it doesn't mean that if you are into fashion and textile, you could not work in space design. It is the idea of actually understanding what design can do. And if they're able to understand this notion of how design's boundaries are extremely blurred and overlapping, I think that barrier of just working in a very siloed manner would break free. And I think that is exactly why I could see that journey was so smooth in your case, because that conviction of finding something new for yourself and for working with the communities was so organic. So I think that is what one must always look into.
Yes, I think as students, I feel a design practitioner is a student all life. Anybody who's to work
Absolutely.
with design and to work with fashion has to, there's so much happening around us. We have to be learning every day, and we have to be open to new ideas. When you mentioned, it's all interconnected. So when
Correct.
I, as a designer, am creating my space, I completely want it as my personality, to give that project to somebody. Uh, Especially when I was doing my store and I met Saurav and he came to the store and he saw and he said wonderful, because you put something together in the way you want to put it forward. If you give that, either the person should be completely the same wavelength, or when you craft it yourself, even if you don't know the technical things, you can still learn, but the narrative you want to say and your story and your language will always be yours. So it's very important to follow that, and everything else falls in place.
Okay. Yeah, I think it's very, very right, because that's something which leads you to how your future years will follow.
Every small thing
So,
you do, there's that detail comes through every small thing you do.
when you were making this conscious decision of working with a sari, was it readily accepted or was there huge resistance in the beginning?
Working with the
Sari, when you thought of working with a sari, what happened? Like, was there a resistance that came into picture? Like, because it is something which has been explored numerous times in various fabrics, in various interpretations. So, how did it actually happen for you?
when, as I told you, when I started working with the craft cluster projects, and I started traveling at the same time to different rural areas, it was different crafts, but something which fascinated me the most was how sari actually binded India from one corner to another corner. I'm going to West Bengal, or I'm going to Madhya Pradesh, or I'm going to Kerala, or I'm going to Chennai, and rural areas. All the women are wearing saris, but the way they're wearing saris is different, the textile is completely different. So there is huge similarity, but there's such, it's so versatile. And that's something which hits you when you're doing it on everyday basis. I was traveling like 10 days a month, and it was so amazing to see that, and to have lost touch with sari in the urban time. I'm talking about 2006, 2005, 2004, that point of time, and to just see in rural India women wearing saris on an everyday basis and going on with their daily course, and there's no inhibition there, and they're actually molding the sari to their everyday work and what they do. So that kind of fascinated me. And later, when I was putting my mind through to how to craft my brand, and what I wanted to do, I think sari was a natural answer. And then going into saris, there was no resistance, so to say. I tried, I started working with Banaras as a craft cluster. I started working with Maheshwar, and I could see that I was not able to create anything new. I would create another colorway, another motif, which would look similar to to something, maybe something different in time, but there was nothing me in that particular design, and that led me to experiment with linen, which I had been very close to as a menswear designer, because we were working with finest linen from Italy and France, and making those classic shirts for menswear. So I was very fond of that textile, and to just the thought of taking that textile into saris, and then marrying a traditional uh, attire to a European yarn, and creating a language which nobody has seen for saris, and then uh, giving that product. I think I just found an answer to what I wanted to do with my brand.
Very nice. You mentioned something like that there was this initial apprehension or resistance or the lack of knowledge that maybe the communities had to build this product. So, if you could share something about how you tackled linen and made it into the garment of which you really wanted to, what happened with that journey? Because they
So
were used to working in certain manner.
So nobody was weaving saris in linen. There was mill-made linen fabric, of course. Linen cotton was there, linen silk was there, and the weavers were doing linen stoles, which is a very small bit for, I think, mostly Japanese market and other export markets. It was, constant conversation with weavers. I found a weaver who was open to the idea of, kind of trying something new, uh, and it led us to experiment with the loom. And in beginning he was hesitant. He said, it will break. आप क्या बोल रहे हो? इतना जो width है 47 inches का, उस पे हम साड़ी चलाएंगे तो धागा टूटेगा. And I was like, let's find a way of doing it. And he was open. I said, I'm going to bear the expense of whatever this experiment costs us, and you just give me your time and your loom. And he actually had one loom. He said, okay, let me try. And he made, that he did a lot of experiments on the loom, with the warp and weft, how it was set, how EPI, what kind of, setting we have to do for, because linen, if tightly woven, will not give you the drape and fall you need for a sari. So it was really working at that level of setting the loom properly so that the linen flew, fall in a certain way when you draped it for the sari. And then, I think it was the master craftsman who I worked with, his constant, pushing himself to create that sari is what led us. It was my idea, but it was completely his skill and his effort, which kind of put us through.
So it was actually, if I could say, a conscious and a very serendipitous moment for you. So which ended up creating
I,
this magic.
I was in Singapore at that point of time.
Yeah.
My husband was posted there. And this whole work of traveling to West Bengal, working with that weaver, it was in 2 months holiday, which my son had. And I returned back to Singapore, and I gave him and we didn't have WhatsApp at that point of time. So I gave him my sister's number, and I gave my sister his number. I said, you be in touch, because he would not be able to call me in Singapore. So I said, whenever you finish, whatever happens, you keep her in loop. And she was in touch with him. And then one day my sister said, your sari is done. I said, please courier it. So he sent it to Delhi, and she sent it to me in Singapore. And I'm telling you, I can still remember where I was at my place, how I opened it. And they were really, it was something which I had dreamed of. It was the perfect sari. And I called him, and I was so happy, overjoyed. And he said, ma'am, dekha aapne kya bana? Because he was, they're so used to working with those fine cottons and making those intricate designs, that this was one coarse fabric, length of that coarse fabric, which had very minimalistic design. And he was like, I don't know what's this going to be. And when he heard my voice, he was like, I couldn't hear the excitement. He would be like, she'll push us to make more, and we don't know where we're headed. So that's what it was. And of course, it was a dream come true. It was a lovely moment. I can never forget it.
I think it's in your voice, it resonates this excitement and this pure joy, of finding what you really wanted through that. And I
Yes.
think this is the biggest lesson for anybody who wants to just make a difference by creating something of their own.
Yes,
So,
very important. Because you will fail, there will be hurdles. It's not very easy to take the uncharted path, because you don't know what lies ahead. It's very easy for people to make linen sarees today because everybody knows how to make it now. They're weavers, they're all of it. But to think of something new, come out with something which excites you, with where you can say, I own it, this is mine.
right.
So that drives you every day, every night. You wake up with this excitement in your head and your heart, which takes you forward.
Lovely. This actually leads me to my next inquisition is you mentioned that is actually anybody designing right now? Is anybody thinking about design? How would you like to explain that?
See,
I was sort of thinking in my head all the time when I came back.
so what I meant by that note was that design is a function. Design, if we look at art, design or fashion, and if we see at moments which changed the way we look at certain things. Very humbly, I would say the linen sari. Okay, so before that, saris were mostly restricted to formal wear, something which you would wear for occasion, and it was something which will so there's a lot of thought. You have to look at the larger environment. You have to look at the way life is trending, what is missing. For that, I think my sabbatical of 5 years gave me that time and
Right.
mind space to think about something like this. If I was in a corporate job, I would not have come out with a linen sari. If I was doing something 9 to 5 and was thinking about my next collection and thinking about the margins we have to cover and thinking about the sales that is put on my table by the sales department, and this thinking about my marketing plans, I would not have done this. So design needs a lot of time. Real value which you create by designing something which is the need of the hour really needs thought and time. And when we start following a certain pattern, even me, for example, as a designer, when I've started now supplying to so many stores, we have our own store, we have a website, and this whole burst of social media, where you put a product today on Instagram and tomorrow it is old, because everybody is putting like 100 products in a week, and there's this whole race of what new, and the customer is saying what new. So we've all kind of created this whole cycle which is so fast paced. I don't know where when we think and when we create, following this whole. So I feel that we need to step back, and I think this pandemic in so many ways, of course all of us are going through whatever we are going through. It's changed the way we look at life, the way we lived for such a long time, and in this lifetime to experience something like this. But it surely has given us that time to which we were not taking. If I was not working, I was looking at my Instagram or I was looking at something else. So either I was working or I was digitally engaged with some material. The mind was never free. So to actually design, the mind needs to be free. It needs to think, and actual proper nice designs have taken years to come through. So when we are living this fast, it's a question. When we are living this fast-paced life, are we actually giving ourselves that time to create design, to be able to design?
No, absolutely. And I think, what is happening is this added pressure of submitting to creating that image of a brand which one has created. One has to sort of continuously live with supporting that brand. So, what you are saying and what the reality actually was before the pandemic hit, but two very opposite ends of the spectrum. So I think one thing for sure that has happened is this conscious shift that pandemic would bring. But still, I would like to ask you, so many of the brands have seen shutters being drawn to the windows. How and what should be the way? Of course, one cannot figure out a very specific way. But for you, how would you go about it? Because there is resistance, there are hurdles. But how would you keep your mind going to make design which is still relevant?
See, there is so much So there's so much right now. I was thinking about our conversation and waiting for this call to happen, and I was thinking about what we had spoken that day, and I would say there's a burst of products. There's so much available, so much of that. And do I really want to add to what is already available? One more option. Do I want one more option to what is already available, or do I want to create that is not there? So the thought has to be there for fashion. Fashion is full of products. Fashion is bursting on its seams when it comes to what we've created all around us. So do I really want to add one more option for a person to choose, or do I want to create classics, create seasonless fashion, create something which is more so it's winter, you're creating something for winter, which can be worn for 5, 10, 6, 8 winters, and it's crafted so well that it will not lose its sheen as a product. You'll fall in love with it. How we have, like, painting artists painting, or a particular notebook, or a particular
Right.
pen, because it's so beautifully designed. You'll invest in that, buy a particular thing and keep it for a while. You'll not buy it with a thought of throwing it. So when I talk about seasonless design and against the whole model of fast fashion, I'm talking about creating products which have a longer life, thinking them through, and let them take that wardrobe space for years. And person enjoys that. So I think that's the answer. That's where innovation needs to lead us. That's where we need to put ourselves.
So right. I think that's really something which we have to question. And there's another thing which you mentioned, that there is, when we were growing up, if we were comfortable having the pass me downs of our brothers and sisters, there were no qualms about them, and we enjoyed each of those pieces. But today there's this over availability, over accessibility, where everything is old, everything is worthy of being rejected. So, do we really have relevance for such beautiful memories which we used to create through those experiences?
Yeah, and we have very strong. So, I had an elder sister, cousin elder sister, my mama's daughter, and my younger sister. So there was a 2 year gap. So I would really look at her frocks, and I know that 2 years later I'm going to get this
Very
one,
good way of
and
looking
then
at
it
it.
goes to my sister. And we used to keep them, like mothers used to keep those garments really properly. They used to be, and that whole thing of rafu and doing the hem again, and redoing the garment again, that whole beauty of it is gone, because this, mostly fast fashion, when you're consuming so fast and when you're creating so fast, you're buying and you're throwing, because again it again leads to that one product. If you put your whole heart and thought into one product, it's very difficult to throw it. And then if you're mindfully creating, then the consumer is mindfully buying to keep it for a while. And if I bought that, I really want to give it to somebody, and I don't want to throw it somewhere. So I really feel that we need and there's some societies, there are people who are still doing it. I have a friend in Pondicherry, very close. She lives in the ashram, and she's a teacher, Shrimoy. And she has a daughter of the same age as my son, 14 years old. And she was telling me, she said, we hardly buy, clothes for kids. We have been doing this whole, we keep their clothes very properly. And there's this chain of 6 kids it goes through. And I was like, wow, so beautiful. And they're still following that. So it's just
This,
a matter of, yeah, practice of, it's one simple thing of garments, because we're talking about fashion, and that's more relevant right now. But I would also bring in middle class housewives, our mothers. We've kind of seen them using everything in the kitchen so mindfully. There was not so much waste which was created out of our household every day as much as we are creating today. So they would find use of everything that came. Very few things were thrown, and the villages still practice that. So I think we need to just reorient. You stay in the village for some time, and whenever I go to the village, I stay with my weavers, because there are no guest houses and hotels and such like places there. And to just go through their daily routine gives me so much to take back, to bring back to Mumbai, and then rethink of how I'm living. I'll give you an example here. So we were, a couple of years ago, we were in a flat. when my husband was working in India. We were in a flat which was a 4-bedroom duplex with a terrace. And my artisans from Jharkhand used to come and stay with me. And we used to, be sitting together and used to be in one room, and we used to be sitting together and working and talking in the night. And while one of the conversations, one of them asked me, Didi, aap itne bade ghar ka karte kya? you know and it was a very simple question. आप तो 3 लोग हो, भैया है, बाबू है और आप है, और आप इतने बड़े घर में क्या करते हो सारा दिन? And it got me thinking, yes, seriously, what am I doing? And now, right now, I'm living in a small apartment which is just right for the 3 of us, and meets all our needs, and it's so easy to keep it you know up with
Well,
what I do. So there's simple things, thoughts like this, which you don't think of. And a simple question, when you're mixing with people, who know how to mindfully use their resources, you start questioning a lot of things which you don't question otherwise.
no, I think it is so right of what you said. Somewhere that one step back is so important to see, engage, and then sort of progress. So
Yeah.
sometimes that steady move, that slow move, is very important. So also, you had told me that one of your favorite compliments has been what the amazing designer duo Abraham and Thakur told you about your design, that one of your creations was close to nothingness. So both of them have been my favorites when I was growing up as a fashion student, and I know the amount of contribution they've made to the industry of India. How did that how did that feel? How is it still so fresh in your mind?
It moments like this, you how the memories is built, and you retain certain parts of it which really make an impact on you. So you've been following, like you said, you've been following a certain design aesthetic of putting as minimal as possible, and creating beauty out of it, and thinking, maybe, is anybody noticing what you're doing in the way you're thinking and the way you're putting it forward? So Mayank is a close friend. He's a textile expert, and Mayank Mahansingh called. So this was told to me by him. He was attending the fashion show. This was a balance, one of our collections at FDCI. And after the show, I asked him how it was, and he said, Rakesh was sitting with him, and he said something um, very beautiful. And he told me that, he said, these designs are very close to nothingness. They're so simple that they're, and that, it's like I've achieved, something today, because I've always looked up to their design aesthetic and how they contemporized, a large part of Indian fashion. They gave a different look to it altogether, and so much thoughtfulness in how they brought the textiles of India forward. So that was a moment which will always stay with me, because that is something which inspires you to go forward.
And I think it will speak volumes, and it's incomparable to how many garments you possibly have sold in the lifetime of the brand. That one thing sort of negates everything else. It just holds so much of power. So who actually inspires you around?
So my constant source of inspiration is Mother Nature. Always, nature inspires me in different forms. I'm very fond of plants and flowers, and different vivid colors, wilderness. That's my constant inspiration.
Very right. And I've seen that you've consciously stayed away from the glamour of fashion. And yet there are a lot of people who come back to you and they pick up those statements which remain in their memories and wardrobes. Would you have any such memory of one of those people who really made a difference while you were creating something, and you thought that that experience of meeting that personality or that person really sort of got you thinking?
There's it's so difficult to, I'm not being diplomatic, but it's so difficult to choose one ever.
Right.
But I'll again give one incident. So we were doing this shoot, um, for so I was working very closely with Bungalow 8, the store in Bombay.
So beautiful, yes.
Beautiful space. And Metli, so we were to launch a new collection, and Metli said, Anna, let's do a shoot. You can use my space and let's create something beautiful. Who will you shoot? What will happen? And all of that. And again, my artisans were at my place and we were working on a new collection and just, working. And they were all wearing saris all the time. So I was like, why not shooting them? Because they're the ones who are actually wearing saris all the time. And I told this, and my husband, he's also a photographer. So I told he was to shoot for us. And I said, I'm thinking, let's shoot with them. And he was like, and I'm not worried about anything else, but they've never faced the camera. I don't know what will happen. And we took that chance. We said, okay, fine, maybe it'll not come out the way we want. Let's just go. And so early morning we went, and these women, I asked them, and they were so excited, but still shy because they've not done anything like this before. And the first drape that happened on Cecilia, so Cecilia, Agatha, Nirmala, Sita, all of them, 4 of them, and the first drape of a white and a blue sari with a white shirt. And Cecilia came out, like she was in the changing room, and we draped the sari. And all the drapes we used were from there, from Jharkhand. So she was draped in that sari with a shirt, and her hair were tight in a bun, and no makeup at all, and just kohl in the eyes. And she came out, and that's the most stunning picture I've ever seen. That Santhal shoot is still very close to my heart. And how these girls just, and so strong and so confident, suddenly they transformed in front of the camera. So I think that's one incident I cannot forget. When Cecilia just came out of the trial room, and everybody, like my husband and the light guy, and everybody was looking at her like, what happened? So that's something which stays fresh with me.
Right. I really, that has actually been the anecdote of the session, I was not expecting that answer at all. So it is so, we don't know where we find our inspirations,
No. And my inspiration for sari has usually come from the craft clusters and the villages.
Yeah, I think it's very visible in the way the brand speaks of it on all possible genres and platforms. So that is one thing which is so amazingly intrinsic that you see it all the time. So on that note, Anavila, why does fashion matter to you?
So, I will again, you opened up with a quote from the book by Princess Corner, and why fashion matters. It matters, on a bigger scale, if you see, to economy, to the social culture, to, the way businesses are, so many things it impacts and it matters. But I think for me, it matters the value I create at each step in my journey. So from how we source our yarn, to where we weave them, to how we dye them, to what happens on the loom, and then when we do khatwa or any other embellishment, how it's dyed, and finally it comes to our store and then to the customer and how customer engages. So fashion matters to me because of the value we can create at all those levels, and the empowering impact it can have on craft clusters if done right. So when we talk about if we talk about handloom sector or the textile sector where I work, it is second only to agriculture. And what you can do if we have these constant engagements of designers and artisans and creating products together with each other, what we can do is which matters to me in terms of fashion.
Yeah, beautifully, because I think you've compiled it really sort of very well. So, Anavila, we do have 2 of the members of the academics with us. So, Mudita, she heads the academic administration, sorry, the academics of the Design Village. And she is a strategic and narrative designer and is also an agile thinker. So she has this beautiful collection of saris. She goes, meets these amazing artisans across the country, picks up these weaves, folds them beautifully. If you see the way she folds her saris and sort of wraps them, is so amazing. So I think it was actually very coherent for her to be here and to ask a question to you now.
Was
Hi, Anavila. It's so nice to hear you talk about so many things. And believe me, if I could, I have like 4, 5 things I would like to ask you. but I think I would go with the one. And so, you said something like skills can be learned, but it's your narrative and your story that one tries to communicate. So, what I would like to ask you is that when someone buys your sari, like an Anavila sari, what's the narrative you want them to experience first?
What I want to experience them first is that, it's the sari, my sari, how I look at it, every sari is like a canvas. So I'm not giving you a design solution for yourself. I'm giving you this canvas, and you have to create your own solution. And that's the beauty of these saris. So there's a linen sari, which a beige and white, the first design which I made, can be worn in so many ways, and can, a woman can give her own personality. So it doesn't define a woman defines my sari. I think that's what I want them to carry. It will not put them in a, if you create design with a thought, everybody's wearing that sari and there's a tag and this is my brand, and everybody's looking at, mini me's of each other. That's not my, every woman needs to experiment with a sari in a different way and give her own personality to that sari.
Oh, thank you so much. I think that just is very beautiful.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vanita, for that. Anavila, next we have Sneha. So
Hi,
Sneha has been very long associated with the Design Village as a facilitator. She actually coordinates the foundation courses at the Design Village and also mentors the fashion and textile atelier. By practice, she is a fashion and textile designer and believes in repurposing waste weaves and redefining what a non-traditional textile can do in times such as today. So Sneha, over to you.
Hi, hi,
hi.
Anavila. It's an absolute pleasure to hear you. To be very honest, the honesty is so refreshing, and also I feel like there's hope in my life hearing you as well. Um, so I have a question because this is something that I have, tried to work on after college when it comes to sustainable design. I know we read a lot about it, we study a lot about it, but I wanted to ask a question regarding this. So sustainability in general, it's about not just the final product. It's about the whole process, whether it's from the conceptualization to how you make something, to the product, to the lifespan, to what happens after that, and so on. It is also about sustaining the livelihoods of the people involved in the whole process. So what I wonder is, in all these years, right? What is that one thing, and maybe this is me assuming that there is one, or maybe there's none, that you still find challenging, to uphold the ideology of sustainability? That one thing in that whole process that you feel is still challenging.
Sneha, there are a lot of things. This whole process is a challenging process. It's, I would not say it's very easy. So in 2019, the collection which we did was completely. So I said I have to move a step forward from natural textiles to all handmade textiles. I also want to work with natural dyes. Okay, and I started working with the well-known natural dye processes in India. And I'll tell you the kind of, my whole collection was delayed for 4 months because of the consistency we needed in the dye. Uh, if there's a flaw in the, the natural dyes will, bleed a little bit, or you still need to fix it properly. And but if there's a flaw in the product, you cannot bring it forward. So that whole process led me to think and to understand that it's not as easy as it seems. You might decide something, but do you have the back end to support it? And do you want to create it yourself? And the kind of investment it leads to, and the losses which you've had because the quality was not consistent, you cannot take that from the customer. So this whole, it's very nice to say that, I'll go one step forward and I'll work on natural dyes, but there's a lot of hard work which goes behind that, and there's a lot of cost which is. So what you're saying is right. There's this one challenge every day which I have to face, but then you say, okay, fine, the next collection, you then again start working with, new format. You find people, maybe these three colors will work right now. Maybe it was quite you were very excited and you said that the whole collection will be natural, right? So one step at a time, you kind of come with a huge plate of things which you ambition, which you want to do, and be very ambitious about it. But then you narrow it down and you say, one step at a time, this is what I want to do right first, and then maybe I'll go to this step. So it's a constant struggle. It's not easy.
Thank you. And I think the fact that it's a challenge throughout and you're still there, I think that's the beauty of it. Because there's always an easy way out, to be very honest. People always have that, hey, I can always go back to this. And
Yeah, but all of us sitting here are here for something, for a purpose. We believe in something, and some of my friends even ask me, you can be a really nice, happy housewife. Your husband does whatever he does. So if I'm here, if I'm here and I'm working and I'm designing and I'm creating this brand and I'm pushing myself, I'm doing it for a purpose. And to shortcut it for to sell more pieces, it's not my dream. I'm not going there. Thank you.
Thank you, Sneha and Mudita. Now we have a few of the students who had sent in their questions from beforehand. So here we have Kani Mozi from Mettur, Tamil Nadu. She asks, if you were to design the journey of a fashion designer in a few words, how would you?
Sorry, I didn't get the name.
Her name is Kani Mozi.
Kani.
Maybe I'm pronouncing it wrong. Yeah, but
Kani, I think a fashion designer or a designer, any designer for that matter, has to be like an innocent, excited child. And you have to be able to research, read. There's so much which people before us have created. And to innovate, to look forward, we can only, so in so many ways, I didn't create a new garment. I created a new textile by using another fabric, for that particular garment. So everything we want to create or think is already there in some way or the other. And so you need to really do your research, and then you have to go forward with the innocence and excitement of a child and say that, this is your contribution. Try to create your, narrative and be true to it.
Thank you. Arushi from Meerut writes that nowadays we see the influencers, the bloggers, the models, and various luxury brands projecting a certain imagery of fashion on social media necessarily. Is that the right way of projecting fashion?
It's not only fashion, it's everything else as well. Social media has taken over our lives in so many ways. It's food, it's fashion, of course, because it's as we say, it's the most easy way of self-expression, and people are getting this social media to do new experiments and showcase to so many people on a basis. So I don't think there is any right or wrong, but I feel that's more their representation of what they feel and how they want to express themselves. But it's not the direction in which fashion is going. I think it's much more deeper and much more wider. So we as designers need to look at that picture of, as I would give you a current example of pandemic, that, a lot of us are working from home now. The whole fashion or the whole usage of garments or the way wardrobes look will change. So are we as designers, as thinkers, kind of addressing that, looking at that, thinking about that? I think that's much more important than the social media and how it's overpowering fashion.
Thank you. So the last question from the student is from Yogita. She's from New Delhi. And she says, how could fashion actually bring that change in the society that it needs?
So, fashion, Yogita, is, as we discussed earlier, garment industry is the biggest polluter of this earth, of this planet. The kind of garbage that we create and the fast fashion and what we chuck out of our wardrobes. I think mindful, what I always say, that it starts from a designer. The consumer only has those many options. What you will create will be consumed. Okay, so it starts from us as designers. How mindfully are we creating? What are we creating? What are the options we are giving for a customer, for a consumer to be more mindful?
Thank you. And if we were to part with that one message for the Design Village community from you, Anavila, what would that be for these young minds, all of us who are sort of struggling to find that hope for tomorrow in the current times?
I think all of these new kids, like I tell my kids, my son who's 14 and my nephew who's 15, that you have so much in front of you. The world has changed. We were exposed to so little. Our worlds were confined to the small towns we were born in. Delhi used to be, oh, I'm going to my grandmother's house in Delhi and this is what I've planned for. And the entire world. You've seen what we have faced due to our actions, which have been irresponsible a lot of times, and where we are right now. So they are the kids, they are the people who have to find solutions for tomorrow. So be excited about it. Use what you have in your hands. Use this whole information, knowledge which you have around you to create a better tomorrow for all of us and for the coming generations.
Thank you so much. I think what we've created today, Anavila, all thanks to you, is a new chapter. And I really think that this will ink a new beginning in why and how fashion is actually looked upon in today's time, and actually what we believe as fashion and textile here at the Design Village. So I really hope that people believe that fashion is just not a habit, it is a way of life, and it is how purpose is given to that life on day-to-day basis through numerous those hands and minds who struggle ceaselessly to provide food, to provide this comfort that all of us are so privileged of. So I am really humbled and privileged to be here with you. And I thank each and everybody to be a part of this amazing beginning. Thank you, Anavila.
Thank you, Vatsal. Thank you, Sneha. Thank you, Mudita. Thank you to your entire team for having me today. It was lovely. Lovely for me as well.
Thank you, Anavila. And Anavila, just to add to how you have summed it up, we will do this series every month and add a new chapter to it. So we've thought of it as a 6-part series. So passing on from you, we would actually have Mr. Varun Bal on 15th of January, who would actually talk about how he's known for the magnum opus of Indian weddings, but he wants to go beyond that and actually see why can fashion find its relevance in those beginnings as well. So I really hope that all of us come back and create a new journey then.
All the best to you and all your efforts.
Thank you so much, Anavila. An absolute pleasure.
Thank you.
And I thank each one of you all to be here amongst us. And have a good evening and take care of yourselves. Thank you.